Hey you guys, this is the video that goes with the Q&A tutorial for the question on adding life to your drawings and kind of trying to give them more energy. So I have already started at this point. I've done some gestures. Gestures are really simple. I mean, it's really just when you see there, as far as my personal style, that's kind of irrelevant. The idea is just to scribble down the idea of an anatomy as fast as you can, and I suggest you kind of focus on the center line or the spinal cord first and then build out from there. But really just doing anything you can to kind of capture the energy in the pose you're going for, and doing as many as you can to just see what's working and what's not working, and then move on to another drawing, do another one, see what works, see what doesn't work, do another one. And I'd suggest you not even think about it too much while you're doing them. You sort of, do 10 of them, go back, look at them, see how you feel about it, do another 10. If you're working from a model, obviously you don't have the time always to do that much, but assuming you're working from a photo, like I would imagine a lot of you are while using these tutorials, just do as many as you want until you feel like you really kind of capture the basic idea of what you're trying to convey with your drawing. And if it doesn't feel like it's working, just do more of them. I mean, just don't settle for one where you're like, well, this is kind of what I want. I'll just do this. The whole idea behind doing them fast and small and sketchy is you just keep doing more of them, because if you don't have an idea you like yet, there's really no point in starting the drawing. So here I'm building on my gesture, and you can see obviously I've curved her back a lot. I've kind of tweaked all of her limbs. I've moved them all around except for that front arm. But if you look at the original drawing, I mean, most of what I have there is still in the original drawing. The only main difference is how her back arm is now stretched out. And depending on how you want to do it, I mean, if you've done a lot of figure drawing, you may feel comfortable kind of knocking out that arm. But especially if you're working on something for an illustration or a drawing that is something that means a lot to you and it isn't just kind of another page in your sketchbook, you may want to consider just push the pose as much as you can, do whatever strange thing you can to try to get what you want out of it. And then if the pose is especially different from the original, get more reference. I mean, you could just, I could very easily just shoot a photo of one of my friends or go on to one of the numerous pose sites online, like PoseSpace or something like that, and you can find a woman in a pose relatively like that, so that I could get that little additional bit of information I need to kind of know where all of that arm musculature is and how that's going to work out. And notice as I put down, even in this basic, the structure that I'm putting down right now, I'm trying to be a little more fun with the lines than in the copied one. The curves in her body are a lot more defined, and they're more exaggerated, and things taper off more in the right drawing than they do in the left drawing, especially like her ankles and her wrists. And really, however cartoony you want to get with it, it's personal preference. I mean, I actually originally had assumed I was going to make something more cartoony than this, but sometimes you get halfway through a drawing and you're like, you know what, I like the direction it's going in, and I felt like realism would be a good way to kind of finish it off. Which I do think probably helps the Q&A more, because if I'd gotten really strange with it, it may have been less helpful. Also, if I caricature her too much, we move a little bit too close to the triplets of Belleville. Now you may notice that I'm going to go over the face quite a few times. In any kind of figure drawing, and especially if it's a likeness, I mean, any figure drawing in general, but if you are drawing a particular person, the face is going to end up being the main focal point, no matter what you do. That's just the way the human brain is programmed. Most people will spend most of their time looking at the face you're drawing. So it is worth your time to make sure everything in that area is exactly the way you want it. And again, just like with the gesture, as I'm putting in the layout for the face, I'm being sketchy. I'm not trying to worry about making anything look pretty. It's just that one singular thought of where do I want everything to be? What is her face doing? How are the muscles kind of moving around? What expression are her eyes making? And then after that, I'll worry about getting the specifics right and making sure the lines are nice and clean. And also, I don't know if this needs to be said, but it's important that you push the expression on the face in the same way that you push the expression in the body. Everything with the curve of her back and the way her arms are kind of flailing out and moving instead of being more static and kind of closed in like they are in the drawing on the left, that's all trying to convey a message. And her face is also probably your best area to convey that message. So make sure that her expression is saying the same thing, and try to push the elements of it and the caricature aspect of it the same way that you're pushing it in the rest of the body. I mean, you don't necessarily have to do that, but let's say you made the face really cartoony and you kind of push the body a little bit. It could look strange. I mean, it might feel like different parts of the drawing don't belong together, or it's just disjointed. But if you caricature the expression in the body to the same extent, it'll feel unified. As you've probably noticed, I am keeping each of the separate drawings has its own layer, so that if I want to, when I go to the next step, I can just make everything below it more transparent, and then have whatever my top layer is be at 100%. If you're just getting started with figure drawing too, as I'm looking at this, it helps if you have some kind of anatomy chart around you somewhere that you can look at as you're drawing each bit, just to make sure you aren't leaving out something important like, say, the space between the pelvis and the rib cage. There are a lot of things where, especially if you have a character who's kind of twisting towards the camera or something like that, where there'll be times when you can't see the whole body, and you still need to know everything that's going on in every part of it to make sure that it all moves together as one, because no one part of the body moves by itself. I mean, pretty much if you're standing up and you lift your leg, your whole body shifts to, even though it's subtle in the upper half, your whole body shifts a little bit to compensate for it. And the only way you're going to get the muscles to feel right is if you can feel what the whole body is doing. And if there are parts of anatomy that are still kind of foreign or mysterious to you, I just suggest you have reference around somewhere, so that when you're looking at the model or the photograph or whatever it is you're working with, you can picture the parts that aren't there. So at this point, I'm still trying out different layouts for the face, but since it's the face, I'm starting to be a little more careful with my lines just so that when I go over it the next time, I can have a little bit better idea of where the final's going. Again, you really can't spend enough time making the face right. You may notice that as I'm sketching in the hair, I'm actually trying something totally different from the reference. But that's a likeness thing. Just because in this case I am working with someone who is a well-known, famous person. It's worth trying to go for some of their more iconic looks, although in the end I just went with her original haircut that's in the reference. So my main goal with the necklace is to have it in a lot of different lengths, because you know, in the photo, her necklace is all pretty much the same length, all the little ringlets of it. But I wanted to, A, vary it and have it so they're at different lengths, just to kind of show more motion. But then B, while having them all overlap and get kind of crazy, try to make sure there are no tangents, which basically means you don't want to have spots where you can't tell which chord is which and where they would be crossing in such a way, like, say, two are making an X. That's okay, but if you have a third one cross at the same point, it suddenly feels really unnatural, because it seems hard to believe that they would all be converging at the same point. And for whatever reason, the human brain has a way of trying to order the things that you're drawing, and it will create tangents all over the place if you're not paying attention. So you have to kind of go in there intentionally and make sure the way that each of the necklaces fall isn't confusing. It may seem tedious to draw out each of these pearls, by the way, but I find that if you use copy-paste and just put a bunch of circles in, it can make it feel kind of stiff, which, if this were like a stone statue of a person with a stone necklace, that could work really well. But since the whole idea of this drawing is to push the energy and the motion, I don't think I could have gotten away with it. in the same way that the face is really important for expression, how you place the fingers is going to say a lot about your figure drawing. The hands are probably the second most important means of expression that we use outside of our face, and so it's worth spending time to kind of experiment and see what hand positions convey the message you're going for. And again, I'm going for kind of like a lively, jazzy feel. So the main thing is I know I don't want her hands to be stiff and for the fingers to be symmetrical or all in the same pose or be too predictable. I kind of want them to be all each finger out doing its own thing. The banana skirt is the same situation as the pearls, where you have to draw them all individually. Not just so that you can try to avoid the tangent situation, but also with them, since they're all pointing in different directions, it's important that you kind of create that curve around her by showing how the bananas are changing direction as they go around her waist. So now that I have the layout pretty tight, I'm going to go in, and again, this is one of those things where you may not even necessarily want to do the last step unless this drawing is something that you want to make especially nice. But with the layout that defined, I feel comfortable enough going in to start doing the final lines. And having this much of it figured out beforehand allows you to spend more time thinking about how you want to be expressive with your line work, as opposed to just trying to make sure you get the structure right. And you can kind of see in the same way that I'm trying to draw her body with a lot of kind of smooth curves and sleek lines, I'm doing her face the same way. I mean, for the most part, I'm trying to avoid any kind of hard edges or sharp turns. Everything's a bit soft and rounded. But still just a little bit sharp to be exciting. And again, I'm kind of embellishing with her hair right there because in the photo she's not curling it like that, but she does. She would curl her hair like that often, and I think it's a little more iconic, so I went with it. Alright, well I think you guys have watched me clean up my layout enough at this point. You kind of have a pretty good idea of what's going on. Hopefully this has been illuminating to some extent, at least for your figure drawing, and for pushing your poses and working with gestures, and just kind of how far you can break from your original reference if you're willing to spend more time on those gestures and work on the layouts. But yeah, so I hope you guys learned something, and thanks a lot.